Well, I can't say welcome back because you've never been here before. This is the Word expanded, the Gospels edition. Right, that's fantastic. We introed it the other day. We talked about the fact that we're going to go through the Gospels. We're going to go through them step by step, verse by verse, and pull out some stuff. Now, I said that, got excited about it, and then I remembered where we were starting. Matthew. And I remembered what is at the beginning of Matthew. A bunch of names. And I remember how in every moment possible, I have other people read the names. Or I say the people. I skip the names unless I'm deliberately drawing something out of it. So right from the very beginning, here in the Word, we have a expanded. We have, I got a moral dilemma. I either am going to be a man of integrity and do what I said I'm going to do, or I'm going to cheat from the very beginning, which is probably going to, ruin the integritizationalism of this entire show. Not the words I make up, but the fact that I just didn't do what I said I'm going to do. So I'm going to get to practice what everybody else does in front of me. That is, say a bunch of words. If I say them fast enough, you're not going to know whether they're right or not. If you are watching this and you are going to pick apart my pronunciation of these words, then you shouldn't be watching this show anyway, right? Because you're doing it with the wrong heart. But I want you to know, normally, I'd make somebody else do this, right? And I would do it with a smile and for fun, right? Because we just get to see what other people do with these things. Normally what I say to people is read it as fast as you can and you're going to be okay. So we're in Matthew. We're in chapter 1. And we're going to read more verses than I will probably ever read ever again in one moment, right? And then I want to pull out 4 names for you. 4 names for you. Are you ready? Yes. All right, good. Glad for that answer. Thank you. The book of Matthew, the book of genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David. I'm not really sure why Matthew didn't stop there other than he's trying to prove the Jewish roots and all of these things for this. So there is importance to this, right? The son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, right? So we're starting with Abraham, the beginning, the father of the Jewish nation. Isaac's pretty easy to pronounce. And Isaac, the father of Jacob. Jacob, the father of Judah and his brothers. And Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar. Perez, the father of Hezron. And Hezron, the father of Ram. Ram, the father of Amminadab. And Amminadab, the father of Nahashon. Nahashon, the father of Salmon. Salmon, the father of Boaz by Rahab. Boaz, the father of Obed, by Ruth. And Obed, the father of Jesse. Jesse, the father of David the king. David was the father of Solomon, by the wife of Uriah. Solomon, the father of Rehoboam. Rehoboam, the father of Abijah, and the father of Asaph. And Asaph, the father of Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat, the father of Joram. Joram, the father of Uzziah. Uzziah, the father of Jotham. Jotham, the father of Ahaz. And Ahaz, the father of Hezekiah. Hezekiah, the father of Manasseh. Manasseh, the father of Amos. Amos, the father of Josiah. And Josiah, the father of Jeconiah, and his brothers at the time of deportation to Babylon. Now, I really wish it would have stopped there, but if it had stopped there, we wouldn't get to Joseph, because the names get really, really worse after this. I don't know what happened after captivity, but somehow in captivity, after captivity, people decided, right, to make different names. So, here it is. After the deportation to Babylon, Jeconiah was the father of Shealtiel. And Shealtiel, the father of Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel, the father of Abiud. Abiud, the father of Eliakim. Eliakim, the father of Azor. Azor, the father of Zadok. Zadok, the father of Akim. Akim, the father of Eliad. Eliad, the father of Eleazar. And Eleazar, the father of Mathan. Mathan, the father of Jacob. Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, whom Jesus was born, who is called the Christ. Look at that, I made it. I want to point out, I'm going to add a 5th one. I want to point out 5 names, 4 names, and a allusion, an alludedness too, right? 5 names and an alludedness, right? In this list of men, there are 5 women listed, right? 4 of them outright, right, are given the names. One just is the wife of Uriah. But I want you to look at these women with me, right? This is super important. Sometimes we read these lists and we just skim over it, which is what I told you I wanted to do. But if you read this genealogy, it's super important. Number one, God uses messed up people. Number two, God used a whole bunch of women. Number three, God used a whole bunch of foreign women, right? God used a whole bunch of abnormalities in his line of Jesus, in the lineage of Jesus. Let me tell you a little bit about each one, but I want you to go and look them up for yourself, right? So it starts off with Tamar, right? Tamar is super important, right? Because she's the daughter-in-law of Judah. So, right, it's Judah, right, and his daughter-in-law. And in Genesis chapter 38, there's a nice little story that doesn't make any sense in the nice little story of Joseph about Judah and Tamar. You should look it up, right? Tamar is the daughter-in-law of Judah. She marries one of his sons. That's how she became the daughter-in-law, right? He dies. Then she marries a second son. He dies. She marries the third son. He dies. And guess what happens? Judah looks at her and does what every good man would do at this point and go, my sons, all three of them have died being married to you. Probably don't want to marry you to another one, right? But that's the law. The law is that Judah's next son, even if he's not born yet, his next son is going to be married, has to take Tamar as a wife. So Judah says, hey, go back to your parents' hangout for a little bit, and I'll call you when my next son is ready, with zero intentions of calling her back. Finally, Tamar, she's a pretty smart woman, and she figures this out. There's no future for her right here. So what she does is devise a plan to show Judah that he was wrong. Out of this plan, right, Judah fathers two children that are named here, right? So he fathers children with his daughter-in-law, and at one point he has to look at his daughter-in-law and say about her, she is more holy than me. She's more righteous than I am. That's a declaration about Tamar. And God uses her in the lineage of Jesus. He could have chosen 100,000 other women. But he chooses not only a woman, but a woman in a very strange situation. And when it comes to the lineage of Jesus, the Holy Spirit actually inspires somebody to put that little reminder in there. Like, hey, let's remind you that this wasn't done exactly the way everybody thinks it should be done. Goes on in this whole list of people to talk about Rahab. Go to the story of Jericho. Go to the spies, the two spies that come out and they meet Rahab. Where does Rahab live? She lives in the city wall. Why does she live on the city wall? Because she has a bunch of prostitutes on with her. Right? And these two men, out of any place in the entire city of Jericho to go stay, they stay with Rahab. Rahab the prostitute, right, is what one version, right, says. This is who she is, right, when they list. Just so we can remember her sins. So we got Tamar, the daughter-in-law, and we got Rahab the prostitute in the line of Jesus, right? And then we go on and we make sure that we add into there the whole idea of Ruth, right? Ruth is the Moabite priestess, right? She's a lady from a totally different land where, by the way, they worship Moloch and they sacrifice children, and she's a priestess of this. And she comes back to the land of Israel, marries her Boaz. Boaz has waited his whole life for a Moabite priestess, apparently, to come be the love of his life. And guess what? They have a child, right? That child, right, was Obed. Right? Obed, the father of Jesse David, right? So we got a great-great-grandfather here that came from a Moabite priestess who is also in the line. So you want to start doing the math, you got a Moabite priestess, you got a prostitute, and you got a daughter-in-law, right, who are all in the line of Jesus. And just in case that's not enough, then we add Solomon, whose mother was Bathsheba, who was the wife of Uriah. Again, it's alluded to, doesn't say Bathsheba here, but it says like, hey, she was somebody else's wife. Just in case you forget this whole thing, this is a woman who had a moment with the king while she had a husband. And God used this woman and her son in the line. And then it finishes it all up with Mary, who is a young virgin teenager, right? Not somebody who'd waited her whole life to have children. She's a young teenager, and God uses a young teenager in the craziest of ways. So I want you to look at this section. I want you to pick out some of the names. You can go find them in the Bible. You can find their stories, right? But look at the fact that in the lineage of Jesus, 5 women are pointed out that God did something crazy unusual with. He used people that, first of all, he normally, right, according to the rules and the laws of the men at this time, he wouldn't have used them. But he used women, and women who weren't, right, the best examples of women that we should be using. He used men like Judah, who had to look at Tamar and say, she's more righteous than me. And he used Judah in the line of Jesus, right? We look at all of these guys. They're not all Boaz-like, where they're seemingly these great guys who are waiting and doing things right until the very end. A lot of these guys that are in the lineage of Jesus are messed up guys. They made a lot of mistakes. Starts with Abraham, who twice gave his wife to another man because he was afraid for his own life. It goes to Jacob, who lied, right? Stole a birthright, right? It goes to Isaac, who ends up doing the same thing that his fathers did. Right? It goes on and on and on. Different people that God chose to use in the lineage of Jesus. A bunch of messed up people bringing Jesus. So let me end and challenge you with this. If God used a bunch of messed up people to bring Jesus into this world, to die for us, as a sacrifice for us, right? For what we couldn't do, does it not make sense that Jesus would use a bunch of messed up people to carry on the mission of Jesus, to carry on the essence of who Jesus is? God didn't stop using messed up people because Jesus became the sacrifice, the one time for all sacrifice. God still specializes in using messed up people to bring Jesus to the world, right? That's how it works. We're to show people not just Jesus, but we're to admit to them that we have a need for this Jesus. You know how I got Jesus? I have a need for Jesus. That's what's over. Every one of these guys messed up. Every one of these guys, a need for God to intervene, a need for God to send Jesus for them. So if you skip over this genealogy, you're going to skip over some unique things. You miss out the fact that there's some women in this genealogy, right? You're going to miss out on the fact that God used some pretty messed up people. So we start off the book of Matthew pointing out that, hey, Jesus came through these people. From the very beginning, all God's trying to say is, hey, there's a need for Jesus. So if you want to start out with me in the book of Matthew, you probably want to start by admitting you have a need for Jesus. Not just looking at my need for Jesus or somebody else's. Look at your need for Jesus. I'm going to leave it right there in the first 16 verses of Matthew. We'll see you next time when we get on to some non-names, which will make me very happy. We'll see you next time on The Word, the Expanded Gospels edition.